What is up? I'm Marcel and welcome back to The Modern Filmmaker. In this video, we are color grading DSLR footage in Davinci Resolve 16. First of all, let's go ahead and take a look at the edit that we're working with today. So I've got my edit pulled into the color tab of Davinci Resolve, and this was shot on the Panasonic GH5. It was actually shot in Cinelike D, one of the standard color profiles in the GH5, and not in log. So if you're working in standard color profiles or with a DSLR that does not have log, this video is especially for you. And the first thing I'm going to do is choose a clip that we can kind of just make our base grade on. Something where, something that looks really nice. Kind of our hero shot that we can base the rest of the video off of. And I'm going to choose this shot right here. The dynamic range is really good. It's a little hot outside this window and a little bright in these lights, but outside of that, it really just has this kind of overall video look that we're trying to avoid that will change in this color grade. And the video look I'm talking about is kind of just this dramatic shift from really bright to really dark. Of course, more expensive cameras, all the way up to film cameras, of course, take in a larger dynamic range, a larger amount of stops in dynamic range, meaning that you get a much smoother roll-off like you would in real life. Of course, if we were in the room with this girl, then we'd be able to see into these shadows, and these hot highlights on her hands wouldn't be, and in the window, they wouldn't be as prominent as they are in video. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get into our color correction with our white balance. So I will click this clip button to get rid of these clips and to give us some more room. And this shot is pretty close to spot on. So I don't really need to do anything special. I'm just going to go to this number 2 here in the bottom left corner. And then in the tint, I'm going to go slightly to the right to add a little more purple-ish. And then I will come to the temp and go a little to the left, make it a little cooler. Because what I was seeing here was it was a little kind of orangish, orange-yellowish, which skin is closer to orange than yellow, but this kind of had a yellow tint. So if I deactivate this node by hitting Control-D, you can kind of see that, which just right off the bat, you might think that's natural, but to me, this looks a lot more like skin when I activate this. Deactivated and activated. And I can even double check this, which you should always do, double check your skin tones. And I'm going to make a power window just to double check the skin tones here. And I'll make this really small to take the softening down to 0. Then hit the highlight button. Make sure we just have the skin. And then I'll come to our parades and turn on the vector scope. And we can see that our skin is just to the right of the skin tone line. So let me go over back to the temp and the tint and see what is off. Okay, I think I went a little too far to the purple. That looks really good right there. Boom. So now we are much closer to spot on, and I can get rid of this power window just by hitting this circle, and now our whole image is affected by that. See, this was already pretty white balance, and if you need to know how to white balance a really bad shot, check out that video. And from here, I'm going to label this node by right-clicking and node label. I'll name it WB. This way, when we copy the same node tree to other clips, then we know, what to affect, and what, we can dig into, which node is which. And so I'll hit Alt-S to add another serial node, and then we'll get into our contrast. And that is where we will really kind of gain back our film look, and try to gain back what's lost here. So we can see here in the scopes that some of these highlights are really pushed towards the top. So I kind of want to bring these back down, because what I want to do is kind of even out the really high highlights to kind of the normal highlights. And if we were looking at the scopes, I kind of want to get these up here closer to where these are to kind of smoothen that roll off out. So let me just go up to the top of the curves and I'll pull this down. And then I will come down to the bottom of the curves and I'll pull this up to seemingly do the same thing to the shadows. We can see that we have a lot of information in the scopes just crushed down here in the shadows. And I would like to bring these closer up to this 512 spectrum, in between 512 and 256. So I'm going to push this up a little bit. Then another thing I will do is come to the shadow button. Right here we have shadows and highlights. That's another way that we can, turn down the highlights, or we can push up the shadows while kind of keeping this lowest spectrum of the shadows right where they are. See, if I push this up, it's really kind of affecting more this 256 range than it is the 128 range. So we can pull this up. And now to me, this looks a lot more like real life. Does it look exactly like real life? Absolutely not. But this looks a lot more, just information-wise, like what you'd be able to see if you were actually in that room. We have more information in these shadows in her armpit, and just around her skin tone, we just have a lot less of those harsh highlights popping out. And I could raise this a little more. I don't want to go too far, but that looks pretty good. And then I'll label this node, right-click, node label, contrast. Now I'll move forward. And what I will do with this node is just add in a little more saturation back into the shot. Just bump that saturation a little bit. I don't want to go overboard, especially with this red. We can see that the red is already kind of out of control. So I can bump this up. And I'm really looking at the other colors outside of the red, because I can see that the red in the scopes is already overdone. But I really want to get the rest of the colors to where they need to be, and then I'll worry about the red. And about right there looks pretty good. I'm going to do something a little tricky with the red. I'm going to come over to the curves, and in the hue versus saturation, I'm going to click this red and kind of just hold and drag along here so it knows what spectrum I'm looking for. And then I'll even widen this out a little bit because I don't want to get into the skin tones. And you can see it made these dots here. I can bring down this middle dot, and you can see in the scope it's bringing that red back down for us, back down to an acceptable level. Because it is the most saturated thing in the shot, so it should be higher than the rest of the colors, but we definitely don't want it just going outside of the entire spectrum that we're working in. So with this there, I'll bump the saturation a little more. I can live with that, and then I will hit Alt-S, and I'll come back and I'll label this one to saturation. And then with this node, I'm going to make a layer mixer. So I'll hit Alt-L, and you guys have seen me do this in other videos. If you've watched other videos, and if you haven't, welcome to the channel. So with this layer mixer here, pretty much this bottom layer is in control now. So if I change anything to this bottom layer, like make the whole thing, give it a blue tint, then the bottom layer is in control. If I turn this off, it goes right back to regular. And what I'm going to do is desaturate this node by coming to the RGB mixer and hitting the monochrome button. Then I will come over to our connector that connects the layer mixer. I'll right click, composite mode, and come down to soft light. Boom. Oh, and already, I mean, you guys have seen me do this in other videos, but it gets me every time. It gets me every time. Look at this. If we were to take away all of this with selecting all of it in Control D, this is what we started out with. Now, I know it really just seems like a pop of contrast, but we've really done quite a bit here. We have reallocated where the light spectrum is in this contrast node, and then we've kind of desaturated the image, but really we've desaturated more of the highlights than anything with the color or with the layer mixer. And it just gives us a really smooth look. And then another thing we can do is come back to the contrast node. Now that we have our layer mixer here that adds kind of our contrast back, but in this really soft and nice way, I'm going to bump up these shadows a little more in this contrast node. Just a little, and I'll turn down the highlights a little bit and come back to our shadow control on the color wheels, this number 2, and I'll even bump that up a little, just so we can see a little more of her face here. If I turn this off and on, looks nice, looks really nice. And if I turn that off, you can see what we're working with. Now this could be cool in some situation. This really could be cool, but in my mind, it just looks like video. It looks like kind of cheap video to me. How much shadows there are, just because in real life it would not look anything like this. So let me activate this again, and later on we will add back the contrast, but we'll do it in the spectrums that would make more sense. So now that we have this here, I will label this one just our mixer, even though we can tell what it is just by the look of it. And then I'll hit Alt-S to make a new node. And this is where I kind of want to mess with a couple of the colors, primarily this red here. One thing I'd like to do is come to the hue versus luminance, and I'll click on this red, and I'll widen this a little bit, and crank this down. Now it's giving us a much better, less faded looking red. And it looks more saturated, but it's not. It just pops. It just pops. And I think I like it right there. That'll work. I do like that. And then I'm going to come to the skin also. And let me make, I'm going to go to the hue versus hue. And I'm going to make a point right here. And then I'm going to move this a little up, slightly up, slightly up. The skin was looking a little yellowish. And just that little bump, you can really see what it did to the skin, to her shorts. Looks really good. And you would never know. You would never know. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to come back to our layer mixer real fast. Sorry I'm jumping around, but I'm having fun. I'm enjoying you guys. Hope you're enjoying me. So in our layer mixer, in this top color node that's really holding our color, you can see I've explained this in other videos, so I'm sorry to repeat myself. But you can see in this top node it holds our color information. Our bottom one holds our mainly just contrast information. So in this top node, I'm going to soften this to really soften her skin by just going to the mid-tone details and this number 2 at the bottom left and turning this down a little bit. And in some situations, like if this image needed noise reduction, which it really doesn't, if it needed noise reduction, then it would kind of soften the skin for me. And in that situation, I probably wouldn't add this softening. It would just kind of do it inherently by kind of getting rid of some of the noise. But in a situation like this where I'm not using noise reduction, I do like to use that, especially with females, to kind of just give them a softer look. So they don't look too hard, and so they just look a little more pleasing to the eye. Especially when they work out like this. Some people aren't used to seeing girls this jacked. I totally am, but some people aren't, so it kind of just helps soften the blow, if you will. And then from here, I will label this node Color Play, because this one kind of just holds some different color luminance and color hues, and then I'll hit Alt-S to make one more node where I will add back our contrast. Actually, I'm going to make 2 more nodes. Surprise, surprise. And in this one, and before I add back our contrast, I'm going to make our highlights pop a little bit. I'm going to come to the qualifier, hit the highlight button, and then I'm going to raise the shadows, the lows of our luminance until we're just getting these highlights, really just kind of some of the defining highlights. And then I will soften this also, scoot it up a little more. Once again, just getting those defining highlights that really kind of create shape and drama, and then I'll click off the highlight button, and I'm going to go to the primaries bars, and I'm going to move the gamma up a little bit, just probably by 1. Then I'll move the gain up a bit, and you see that little difference there? See your hands, if I bring this back down, really giving that highlight a little extra pop. Now that's just preference, that's strictly preference, but you know, it's fun. Now I'm going to come to the mid-tone details, and I'm going to push this down a little bit just to soften those highlights out. And if I click on and off, deactivated, activated, I like that. It kind of brings a little more attention to our hands, and of course that's what you want, because the previous shot, we're sort of squeezing the cream out, and you know, we're trying to tell a story here. We're trying to be storytellers. The girl walks up to the beautiful product, she grabs the product, gives it a little squeeze, gives a little rub, gives a little more rub, gives a little more rub, you know, it's really about the rubbing. You know, that's what people want to see anyway, but let's not get perverted. So back here, now we will go back and add in our contrast. And from here, it's really up to you, the film look you want to give it. It's really up to you. So if I come to the curves, we can do a few things. I can make a point here. I can just click in this deep shadow here. You'll see it makes a point down here at the bottom. I can hit right here on her chest, because I really don't want this to get any brighter than it is. That's like as bright as it needs to get, or we're not even going to be able to see skin. It's just going to seem like a white blob. So, and then I'm going to hit somewhere in the middle. Let's say right here. Boom. I like that. And then from here we can just use our luminance value here. Just the white dots in the curves to kind of control our contrast. See that? Now we're getting that beautiful contrast back. And if we want, we can make a point here at the bottom and push up if we want to add a little film fade, which is really kind of cool. And then maybe a point up here in between our highest and our medium point. And kind of just, I just really want to see where this roll off is. I want it a little high, and then I'll come to this medium point dot and pull this down just to add a little more drama there. And if I deactivate this node, it's a subtle difference. It's subtle. But let me go ahead and deactivate the entire thing. Even that is subtle, but it makes all the difference. And to me, this has a much more film-esque shot right off the bat. Now, I kind of like the color tones here. I like that the color tones are mainly the red, the skin tone. Of course, we have a kind of the brown in the bricks, and black. Those are kind of our 3 base colors here. So, in my personal opinion, I would not do a teal and orange, but if I wanted to, I will definitely throw that in here. I would simply make a new node with Alt-S, and then come over to the log wheels, and I could add a little bit of blue in here. Let's see. It actually doesn't look bad. A little blue in the shadows. And then I'll add a little warmth back on the midtones. I'm going to push this a little high, though, up towards the purple almost. So I like that look for this. You see that? Now we're getting a really nice, it's a subtle teal and orange. It's very subtle, but the color contrast just helps sort of pop even more, and I love that. And then maybe I'll take these highs, and let's say I might push them towards the warm side as well, because obviously the sun's coming in here, you know, giving her that nice warm color. I like it. That looks really good. Maybe put these midtones a little more towards the yellow. And now if I deactivate this one, activate, now that's made a really nice difference. I can't believe I was against that about 10 seconds ago, but I love it. I love it, and I'm going to keep that. And that's what's fun about color grading, is sometimes you just like, well, let me just try this, let me try that. The more you try, the more you learn. And now I've found this beautiful, awesome grade that I'm really into. And one last thing we'll need to do is one more node. We have quite the node tree here, but we have made quite the difference if we look at before and after. So the last thing we need to do, because we just pushed some blue into the shadows, just to cover our bases, guys, let's come over to the luminance versus saturation in the curves, and then hit this black dot here at the bottom. And then this is pretty much just our luminance versus saturation is from black to white. How much do you want that saturated? Do you want the midtones super saturated? No, we don't. But what we're really trying to do is get those blues out of the blacks. So while I do want blues in the shadows, I don't want blues in the black. So I'm going to take this dot at the very bottom and just turn it down. Boom. And this again is kind of preference on where you want the shadows to lie. I can bring this over and kind of dictate where the shadows start to become saturated. Or I can play it safe and leave it out here. It's really up to you, but that's a nice little change, because if I turn it off, you can see we see a little blue here, which you might mind, you might not, but I like to keep my blacks black because it adds another layer of contrast separation. You know, you've got in the shadows, you've got a slight blue tint, but then you've got black, and then you've got the cool or the warmth and the midtones, so on and so forth. And now that we've done this, I'm going to come back to our color play node here, and I'm going to go to a hue versus hue, and I'm going to get rid of that, because now that we've pushed those colors into the midtones, I really don't need to affect the hue of her skin tone anymore. It looks really smooth and really natural and really good. Now if I deactivate everything, I think that looks nice. I mean, I love the way the blue tones, you can barely see it there, but when you turn it on and when you deactivate the nodes and then activate them back, you can really see how the shadows, our teal and orange and the shadows here, really brings out a different separation contrast, like a color contrast between the highlights of her skin and the shadows of her skin, really kind of making this seem a lot more dramatic than it actually is. And one more thing I'll do is tone down our saturation again on the red, because again with those warmth pushed into our midtones, we're getting a little more red. So I'm going to pull this down a little bit, and then I will even pull our luminance back up just so it doesn't look too crazy. And bada bing, bada boom. Gosh, like this, I thought this looked good coming out of the camera. I did. I was like, these shots are bomb. You barely even need to color grade them. But of course I was wrong. So this looks good. This looks nice. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. So I'm going to go ahead and label these nodes real fast. Highlight, bump, and this was our final contrast. And this was our teal and orange. And this last node was our desaturated blacks. It's gonna, yeah, that's fine. So now I will come down here to our very first clip, and we'll just start going down the line. And this is really simple. All I need to do now is right click the clip we just color graded and apply grade. Man, that looks good already. It just looks smoother. It looks nice. And so one thing I am noticing is the highlights are a little hot. So let's come over to our contrast right here, where we kind of reevaluated our luminance. And I'm actually going to go to this number 2 here and see if I bring down the highlight button. Ooh, that does help us. That really does. That's a nice. That's a very nice. And then I'm going to check our white balance too. Yeah, I'm thinking that's a little off. Let me come to the temp and tint. I'm going to move that a little to the green, and then this a little to the blue. Slightly. Yeah, it's a subtle difference, but this kind of had a warm, almost purple cast. This is a lot more even, and it separates our colors for us, which is great. And now we have a much better image. But one thing I do want to do is make this product stand out. And the way I'm going to do that is, let me just squeeze this stuff together. And after our color play, I will make a new node. Actually, after our highlight, I'll hit Alt-S, making a new node that we can make a power window with. Boom. Let me tilt this a little bit. Voila. And I like it. Very good. Soften this a little more. Let me shrink it down. And I'm just going to go to the midtone details and bump that up a little bit. And then the white balance over here is a little different. So I'm actually going to come to the temp, and I'm going to push this a little towards the cool side. And then I'm also going to bump our contrast. Now, if I deactivate this node, we really haven't affected the background. It's really just the products, they pop a lot more. Very beneficial. Very helpful. I like that. Boom. Another shot well graded. And then in this node, I'm actually going to copy in this clip, I'm going to copy our node tree from our first one, because I will want to bring that power window back in over here to once again kind of make the product pop a little more. So again, right click and apply grade, or you could also mouse wheel in this clip. You could click it on the mouse wheel and it would apply the grade also. And so with this shot, we have a little different luminance spectrum there. So I'm going to come back to our contrast. I'm going to bump the highlights back up. This shot was a little darker than the other one. And then I will come to our power window and I will reshape that window right there. And if I deactivate, activate, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to track this bad boy. And then I'll click back and I will track the other way. Didn't work so well, but it's okay. I don't mind if it stays there. I actually don't drastically need it to go with where she takes it, but if you do, you can easily come over here to frame, and then now any adjustments you make will follow. So if I come to the last keyframe and I pull this up, now it will follow. Boom. Yeah, it does help. It does help. I'll admit it. It helped. So let me come over here and I'm going to track this one also, even though the camera doesn't really move enough for me to really care. You know, just to cover my bases. Just to cover my bases. So I'll come to this shot here and I will do the same. I will copy this last one and apply that grade. Let me check this white balance. That seems close but not spectacular, so I'm going to make it a little cooler, and then I will come to our power window and I'll move this right to where our hand is, and I'll even sharpen this power window a little bit. See that? That little pop there? It's a little over sharpened, but from back here you would not be able to tell. No, that looks good. And so let me track this also. Boom. And it's pretty simple. I mean, it really doesn't take much to color grade an entire sequence. And I'm liking how we are looking, and let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. So we've already done this clip. Let's come to this one. Now, the problem here with this clip, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save myself time because the shot's a little out of focus. I was supposed to be focused on her stomach where she's rubbing the ointment in, but I am focused on more so her chest. And so in this situation, we're going to have to accentuate that. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this color tree, or the node tree from this clip, because I will need that power window again. Whoops. Click in on the mouse wheel, boom. And I will fix our white balance. Get it closer. Boom. That looks a lot better. Yeah. And from here I'll move our power window up to her chest. Actually, I will move this so we can kind of just, we can make the logo pop, because obviously we're not focused on the stomach. So what can we be focused on that would be compelling to this video? Steel Fit, the brand the video's for. So I'll come over here and let me just bump the contrast. That just helps a little bit. I mean, there's really not much you can do. If you're out of focus, you're out of focus. The best you can really do is switch the shot out. But if you know the company's like, we really want to close up, we really don't want to get rid of that shot, just make it work, then you know you can do what you can do. Because if I were to make a power window over her stomach and try to sharpen what's not in focus, that's just not going to work. Don't try to do that. I mean, if I was a little closer to in focus, maybe it would work, but most likely it still wouldn't work. So I'm going to come over here and maybe even go to our sharpen and try to sharpen this a little more. But if I go too crazy, it's not going to seem right. So that's close enough. And we'll track this back and track forward. And we can move on. Next shot. This shot is the exact same shot as this one. So I can apply this grade, and then I can move forward, and I will apply this grade. This one also looks really good, but I'm going to come to the contrast, and I'm going to bump up our shadows a little bit, and maybe come to our contrast and pull this down. There we go. Yeah. Yes, that's beautiful. See, it's just the little things, and if I deactivate, activate, come on, people. Come on. Come on. Yes. So, moving forward, let's copy this node tree again, and I can fix the contrast, because that's mainly where these shots are going to differ, is in white balance and in luminance spectrum. So those are the two nodes that you really, kind of want to move forward. You want to keep moving forward and check those, move forward, check those. And so I can bring these highs down. I'm actually going to bring these down in the highlight control with number 2. And I'll bring our shadows down. And I'm actually going to come down to our final contrast. And I'm going to make a point. I'm going to click on this white here. It'll make us a new point. And then I can pop those letters back out. See that? See how I did that? That was so simple. I'll do it again. I just clicked in the white here, and then, whoops, didn't do it that time. Can't win them all. I'm just going to click here and see it made a new point. Just going to bump that up there. Beautiful. Then we're moving on. Done with that. And I will copy this node tree. And then, of course, this shot is really wild when it comes to the luminance. So I'm going to bump this up and move the highs down. And then we'll really be kind of fixing this in the final contrast. I'm going to reset our final contrast and then remake our dots here. Here's a highlight, a deep shadow, and then somewhere in the middle. Say right here. I want to bring these up, and then I want to bring this down. We can bring this down a little bit. Yes. As always, we're just trying to make the talent pop. What you want people to look at, we're trying to make that really stand out. And that looks solid. Very good. And then I'll do the same with this clip here. But I will raise these shadows quite a bit in our contrast node under the shadow tool. And then I'm going to come to our white balance, because I can tell that one's off. And I'll move this over to the cooler side and a little to the green, slightly. And let's see. In our final contrast node, I'm going to bump these shadows a little bit more. Now you can really see what's going on there. And that's just a short-lived clip, so we will copy the grade from this clip because these are the same shot, just different times in that shot. And keep moving. You know what? I will also check our highlight in this shot. And I'll come to the qualifier and I'll just move this back down until we're getting a little bit of highlights from her. And then voila. Now off, on, off, on, off, on. Looks great. And moving forward, I'm going to go, yeah, I'm going to use this one actually. You want to try to look at your shots. And for instance, this shot had a really good spectrum of light. So we want to take a grade from another shot that had a similar spectrum of light. This one's pretty dark, and so was this one. So by choosing this one, we know that we're going to be pretty close. And then we can come to the contrast and maybe raise the shadows a little bit. And our white balance is off. That's okay. We can come to the white balance and correct this a bit. And let me see, I think our final contrast is really messing this one up. So let me come to our final contrast and I will make some more points in the curves. Again, a highlight, middle, and a shadow. I'm going to bring this up and pull this down. I'm going to make a new point here. Let's say right there. I'm really just trying to get that contrast back. Boom. And then I'll add a little more color in the saturation node. Come do our saturation. Sorry if I'm flying. I'm just, you know, time flies when you're having fun. And now we have a much closer. Boom. They look like the same shot. Almost. I could bring in a little more of this contrast. Boom. Now, voila. I could bring that contrast down a little more. Yeah. Even more. It's really important to check your shots. Yeah. Boom. And this shot, I will come over to this one. Actually, this one's pretty well lit. So I'm going to come over to this one that was also well lit. And apply grade and fix our white balance by moving it a little to the cooler side and then a little to the greener side. And then I'm going to boost our saturation in our saturation node. Yeah, that looks like the same shoot. Our white balance could be a little pushed more, push the tin a little more to the left, a little more. And yeah, now we're talking. Boost that saturation slightly more. Looks really good. Now this one is in the same exact light. So we can apply grade, boom. And this shot, it's pretty simple. I'll just apply a simple grade to match and then bring down our highs a little bit and bring down our lows a little bit. And this shot, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I'm going to bring this contrast down a little more in our final contrast. I'm going to take this dot and scoot it to the right, which will push everything down. Do the same for this one here. Boom. I love this. I love this shoot. This whole shoot was just really, really nice. So I'm going to apply this grade to this clip also. And let me get back to this white balance. And it's a little warm, so let me push it a little to the cooler side. That looks good. And this one as well. I can do the same exact grade there. That looks really, really, really nice. Come on, people. This looks good. Oh, yeah. So again, I will apply our last grade and then fix our white balance again. So over to the cooler side. Now let me go back a few shots so we can really check that white balance. So I'm going so fast. Yeah, that looks good. This could be a little less green. Yep, beautiful. So moving forward, once again, a lot of these clips are the same exact clip, so I can come to this one and come right back to this one. Maybe boost our shadows a little bit so we can see the logo a little more. And our saturation is a little poppin'. Can bring that down a little bit. Yeah. And brighten it up a little more. And come to this one and apply the grade again. This one looks really solid. And then this one is the same shot as this. This is the same shot as this right here. Oh, it's coming together, people. It is coming together. This is very similar to this shot. Oh, that looks good. Oh, it looks good. A little hot, but we can fix that. Yeah, right there. Boom. If you didn't see what I did there, let me just backspace. See, in our scopes before, it was very hot, which means the windows were just super blown out. So I could just bring down the windows and then boost up the shadows in the curves and then kind of bring those highs back outside while bringing the overall as high as they can go, a little down. Now we have a really beautiful look. Let me check these highlights from the qualifier. Yeah. Not totally necessary in this shot, but it does look nice. Still looks smooth. So I'm going to move on. This shot is the same as this one. Check our highlights in this one as well. Yeah, that's good. And then this shot is very similar to this shot. This shot is the same as this shot, just later on in the clip. And I can actually bring some of these highs up in these two shots. Check our highlight. It's good. It just adds that little more contrast pop. I love that. It's a simple thing, but it looks good. I'll apply this, and let me reset this white balance. Pull the temp out of the purple. Pull the warmth out a little bit, because I could see the warm tone on this gray here. So we want to get that back to gray. Love it. And then we have pretty much the same shot from here on out, except for this one. This one is extremely dark, but that's okay. I'm going to choose this one here, and then we will reset the final contrast, and then come back to our original contrast, bump this up a little bit, really just bump up these shadows to get her back in the limelight here, people. And then with our final contrast outside, highlighted the skin, super dark shadows somewhere in the middle. And kind of get her popping a little bit, bring down the shadows. And this looks good about right here. Let me bring this up. Nah. Yeah. That looks really solid. And the white balance, let me get this a little more on. Yeah, and check those highlights. They look good. They look good. And then, of course, we could make the product pop one more time. Let's do it. Let's make that product pop. Let's get that product popping, please. Just by making a power window with a new node. Let's shrink this bad boy down. Soften the ever-living crap out of it. Got a good little power window there. And then we can come to, let's say, the primaries bars and go with the gamma. Let's go with the gain a little bit here. I'm going to pull the lift down. And then let's take a look. Before, I like it. Lift down a little more. Be a little more gamma. A little less lift. And a tiny bit of contrast. Make those things pop, man. Don't forget about the products, people. Don't forget about the products. Off, on, off, on. That looks great. That looks great. Let's track it. Let's track it, people. Woo! This is a good grade. This is a fun time. I love Davinci Resolve. Blackmagic, hit me up. No advanced transitions, no special effects. We have clips, color graded, put to music, and dopeness. Come on, guys. Come on. Is it perfect? No! But come on, this is like a 30-minute video. Probably longer, but still. So if you guys liked this video, definitely make sure to give it a like down there. If you liked it, you might as well. And if you didn't like it, give it a like anyway. It'd really help me out. And if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, definitely leave them in the comment section down below. I always reply, and make sure to subscribe. And as always, I'm Marcel, and this has been The Modern Filmmaker. I will see y'all next time. Peace!